I'm still a little bit sick. It's the main reason why I haven't released a video in the last couple of weeks or so. Been dragging on for a long time. But also, this will be the first time that I've really addressed a hot topic here. That being this essence, the essence of the day, the fateful frame. Um, that now multiple DI content creators have talked about and covered. I tend to like to make guides that I see filling in niches, but I think this is actually in line with that because um, basically my main focus here, I want to point out what a very careful and the advantages of reading carefully with good reading comprehension. And I know that could sound uh, condescending to you, but as rather than just throw that out there like an insult, I want to go into what I mean by that and present a model for you that I think uh, can serve as a productive foundation for theory crafting, for talking about essences and whatever, and you know, in a lot wider application than that as well. Uh, foundation for healthy relationships and what have you. Um, but focusing on Diablo Immortal and this essence here in particular, the fateful frame. Let's go ahead and read it here. So Grim's Scythe also marks enemies for 6 seconds. If a marked enemy is attacked 5 times, the mark explodes and deals damage to nearby enemies. It's actually a rather short description, so I'm surprised there's been so much controversy about it. So, one thing is Apollyon compares this the mark's enemies, the word mark. He compares it with a Blood Knight essence, and let's go to the Blood Knight and look. It's a Shrouded Knight essence called Layered Aims. Shrouded Knight now powers you and nearby allies, causing your primary attacks to mark enemies for death. The marks explode upon reaching 5 stacks, dealing damage to the marked enemy. So he's Apollyon tried to compare these two essences, but when you read them carefully, you can see that the word mark actually refers to two completely different things in these two essences. So here, uh, the Shrouded Knight, what the main thing it does is it empowers you. It empowers you and nearby allies, and then the individual sources of damage that it counts, it refers to as marks, causing they only come from primary attacks here, but from you and your nearby allies. And so each of those individual sources of damage is referred to as a mark in this essence. And then once those five sources of damage called marks, uh, once they reach five, they explode. Uh, that is completely different from the way the word mark is used in this essence. Fateful frame. Grimside also marks enemies for 6 seconds. So uh, there's only one mark here, and it's the one that is applied by the necromancer wearing this helm. And this has a base duration of 6 seconds that can be extended by having higher potency than your enemy's resistance. It can be extended by using two-piece barons, and it can be extended by using the misery elixir gem. But there's only one mark that we're talking about here, and that is the thing that's the equivalent of the empower on the Blood Knight essence. So uh, here the individual attacks are not called marks here. It says if a marked enemy is attacked 5 times. So those individual instances of damage are not called marks in this essence. And it says if a marked enemy is attacked 5 times, so it does not specify the source of the attack. And so when when you have a general statement like that, please try not to read into it. Um, take it at face value, um, and if it doesn't give any examples or restrictions, then don't assume there are any. So if a marked enemy is attacked 5 times, it doesn't say is attacked by you 5 times, does it? It says if a marked enemy is attacked 5 times. And so the default assumption should be that if it's attacked by any source 5 times, by you, by your summons, by your allies, by other people in the raid, by anybody attacking the same target, the marked target. Okay. Um, if they had wanted to specify that it was only your attacks, they could have said either if a marked enemy is attacked by you 5 times, or if you attack a marked enemy 5 times. So yeah, there are ways that they could have made that clear. But my suggestion here in general is that when you read a general statement, don't read into it. Just take it at face value. And in this case, a face value interpretation is that these are any attacks. If it is attacked 5 times, does not specify the source whatsoever. And the fact that the Blood Knight essence specifies you and nearby allies, that's not a valid comparison, because that that's talking about the empowerment, the equivalent of the mark of the mark. So the uh the necromancer essence initially has you marking the enemy. The Shroud of Night essence initially, what it does is not mark but empower you and nearby allies. And so yeah, then it causes these. So the wording is completely different, but so they cannot be compared. It's not valid to compare the two because the wording is completely different here. And um and this wording, through another means, makes it clear that these particular uh instances of damage, which it calls marks here, can come from you and nearby allies. Whereas this necromancer essence doesn't put any restrictions on it. So therefore, you should assume that the attacks can come from any source when an enemy is attacked 5 times. Okay. And GameZone tested it out with the necromancer. Lo and behold, his attacks counted, and made the necromancer's damage by quite a lot. And uh, yeah, that might seem OP, overpowered to you, but it is perfectly consistent with the wording here. That's what a an objective uh, face value reading of this would suggest that it would do. So let's compare it actually to a different necromancer essence. And Grim Scythe, no, it's a Corpse Lance essence, and that would be the Inscrutable Watcher. So a lot of popular Necromancer builds actually use both Corpse Lance and Grim Scythe. So this would have been another option to consider. Corpse Lance triggers an explosion after hitting enemies 4 times in a short period, dealing damage to nearby enemies. So here, in my opinion, this wording is a lot more vague than the wording of the Fateful Frame, because here uh, it says after hitting enemies 4 times. Well, so that is vague because it seems to imply that it's only Corpse Lance, uh, after Corpse Lance hits enemies 4 times, but it doesn't actually state that. So here it is a lot more vague in my opinion, and I kind of wanted to test this essence. I never got around to it, um, as to whether other other types of sources of damage could count towards Inscrutable Watcher, or if it was only Corpse Lance. Um, it would be a little more clear if it said Corpse Lance triggers an explosion after it hits enemies 4 times in a short period. There's also the fact that a short period is vague as well. So yeah, this description is a lot more vague in my opinion than the one that's so controversial now for some reason. This is perfectly clear to me, and of course, Apollyon says you you can't get into the minds of the developers. You can't know what their intention was. And fair enough. I mean, he can't either. Um, but I think it's very strong evidence when you have a a careful, objective, face value reading of the essence being perfectly consistent with the way that it actually works. That was their original intent. That it is currently working as they originally intended, and that they then reacted to to feedback, negative feedback about this. And to be clear, uh I'm I'm not sure. I think Polyan and Lorith might have probably were referring to other people, when they said they were being blamed for having the devs change this essence. To be clear, I'm not blaming Apollyon for that. I What I say is it was likely in response to uh, the type of feedback that Apollyon shared in his first video, and that was twofold. One is people misreading this essence, like Apollyon did, but I'm not saying it was Apollyon that they responded to. He says that they made this change before he'd even put out the video, and I believe him. No reason to disbelieve him on that. Um, and but it seems that there was already feedback, like the feedback he shared, where people were misreading this text and or complaining that it was overpowered. And so I think what happened was the devs thought, well, this is a great idea. It's gonna scale with, the more people are hitting the target. It's going to be especially good for, for example, being in dungeons or raids. And I think they had that design goal in mind, but they just didn't. They, I guess, underestimated just how crazy it could get. Maybe they didn't do proper theory crafting, calculations, testing, whatever. And ultimately, I think they probably responded to player feedback, players just complaining that it was, and I'm not saying Apollyon. I'm not attacking the messenger. Is I'm Apollyon was reporting on people complaining about it, but yeah, people were complaining about it, and they were misreading it as well. And yeah, the two different things, you know, the unrelated things. One is misreading it, and the other is thinking it's overpowered. I mean, you can read it perfectly well and think, oh yeah, this is just too powerful as design. This design that the developers apparently intended was just too powerful, and maybe the developers decided that was the case or whatever. They ultimately, I think, decided to to try to make their players happy. And uh, one aspect is, of course, reducing the power of this essence, at least maybe the scaling, the kind of scaling that you have with, uh, the more people you have hitting the same target. And the other is that even if the developers think this wording is perfectly clear, and even if I do, and I'm not far from the only one, there were multiple other people that thought this wording was clear on, comments on Apollyon's videos. And But even so, if if enough of your player base doesn't think it's clear, well, then you're just not communicating effectively to your audience. And so that's also something that the devs need to consider. So what I'm trying to do here is just encourage uh, this kind of reading where you read a description, for example, an essence description. You read it carefully, one piece at a time. You make sure you understand every component, and you don't read into it. You take it at face value, and then you test, and you see if that testing you see whether that testing is consistent with a face value reading of the essence description to determine whether it seems to be a bug or a text error, or just what I believe was just an intentional design that turned out to be, you know, a lot of players thought was just too powerful. So uh, there we go. And as I say, this is, I think, great to apply in general at work, in relationships, any type of communication. Because I've seen so many misunderstandings. I've been, it can be really overwhelming, when you have people make uh, misunderstandings by reading into text things that are not there. Um, and so, yeah, I just want to encourage people to read carefully and take things at face value, and in this game in particular, then compare it uh, to testing, see if it's consistent, and go from there. So, and to have, a productive, healthy dialogue that avoids personal attacks. And there we go. And that's about all I have to say on that. But I think I thought those were some important points to make. So I hope you enjoyed this or found it, um, got something out of this. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. And take care.